Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Rovers Report, where we're once again joined by Tom, and you join us a day after our loss to Wycombe Wanderers away. A bit of a frustrating one, that wasn't it, Tom? I mean, it was kind of the polar opposite of the Charlton game where we flew out the blocks. I thought attacking wise, we looked really positive, and obviously went ahead in the fourth minute. But the back end of the game, we sort of tailed off a little bit, and I think Sam Frost put it quite well. We got Wycombed really. They defended stoutly, they time wasted, and it was a good bit of game management, which we'll touch on in shortly, mate. But just from you, what were your initial reactions come 6 o'clock on Monday night?
That's spot on, mate. Obviously disappointed considering we started incredibly well. As you mentioned, we came out of the blocks incredibly quickly. Really nice bit of play for Collins by the goal, and obviously great positioning from Coburn, which made it an easy finish for him. We should have been, I think, 2-0 up. Coburn missed that chance. Difficult angle for him. I think he had his back to goal, but if we go 2-0 up there, I think it's a different game. We just didn't really make the most of all the possession that we had in the first 20 minutes. And then, yeah, it's just disappointing the way we let Wycombe back into the game, to be honest, because as you could see in the first 20 minutes, they're not a good footballing side. They're incredibly effective at what they do, which is a lot more direct style of play. And, credit to them. We were Wycombe's. It was really good game management from them, especially after they went 2-1 up. Completely sort of, yeah, stopped the play, stopped the way we were playing. It was just quite frustrating, really. I wouldn't say we actually deserved to win, if I'm being honest. So disappointing, but to use a overused cliche, we go again on Thursday against Exeter.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, mate? I think I had a little look at the appearances, and not necessarily their front four, I think it was, but it was certainly with Vokes and McCleary in there, and it was someone in the midfield. Four of their players, who are all in attacking positions, have over 1,500 league appearances between them.
Mm.
You look at our back four yesterday, and it was just over 100 between them. So for me, whilst it's upsetting and frustrating that we've gone there and lost that game, it's also it makes me optimistic about the future. Barton's always stressed this. We've stressed this. This is a team that's right at the beginning of their journey, and it's a marker that we can go to places like Wycombe. And I wouldn't necessarily say we're the better team. We played the better football, and the thing is, it's small margins, isn't it, mate? Their goal, it was definitely over the line, but another day
Yeah.
that's cleared off the line. Another day, as you mentioned, we score a couple more of those chances in the first half. It's 2 or 3 nil in 20 minutes. Unlikely they're going to come back to that. But yeah, something we definitely wanted to touch on in this was their dark arts or their game management. And I think our fan base actually they've been quite reasonable here. Quite often in these type of situations, you'll get your football fans that fly off the hinges and say it's a disgrace, they're time wasting. Whilst I do think their goalkeeper was a bit out of order yesterday and certainly milked it, I think a lot of their time wasting is stuff you see with Rovers. I look back to the Bolton and Sheffield Wednesday game. We certainly do it, and I think it's something that a lot of League One teams do. I'm sure Barton will tell his players to be smart about it. So I'm not sure it's something we can complain about. But yeah, it's something if we can look at these teams like Wycombe, like Shrewsbury, who play this way, not necessarily adopt their style, but take certain elements of theirs and add it to ours, because it's effective, isn't it? I mean, they've done well out of this for the whole season. And yeah,
Yeah, as you said, they are masters of the dark arts, and we're apprentices of the dark arts, to be honest. Certainly, there have been times this season we've tried to shut up shop, and we've done it well until the 90th minute, and then conceded. I think it's 2 or 3 goals we conceded and lost quite a few points from that. So, yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's sort of part of the game. You have to sort of be good at time wasting. It's not a very nice thing to say, but it's a reality of things, and I think we certainly have tried it. I think, for example, yesterday as well, Marquis, I don't think he died for a penalty, but I just don't think it was a penalty when Streck sort of reached out to palm the ball away from him. So I think, it's those in glass houses, for example, I think it's quite an important thing to consider that all teams do this, and Wycombe just happen to be experts at it under Gareth Ainsworth. So credit to them, they did it incredibly well. I think Streck um, overdid it towards the end of the game, but I think just generally, the little time wasting incidents. I think it's kicking the ball away
Mm,
without the ref looking. The referee, obviously, I think was quite poor. I think it's fair to say. But yeah, I just think it is a sort of learning curve for our players. I think, as I mentioned, they're apprentices of the dark arts, as well as being, fairly youthful team. So it's important to take lessons from those sorts of games because they don't come often. To be honest, obviously we have Shrewsbury and Wycombe, but the majority of teams in the league aren't really as good as those two in that way. So I think it's important to take or to heed the lesson really from yesterday.
mm. I think Barton's learning actually as we go, and I think it's something that I've noticed certainly this season is it's quite ubiquitous across the whole of the EFL at the minute. The standard of refereeing is poor. That's what frustrates me. Is yesterday I don't look at Wycombe and blame them, but the amount of times that their players would gain a couple of yards or take an extra 5 seconds on the throw-ins. If that's me as a referee, you don't want to be too authoritarian, but you go in there straight away and you say, right, that's your first warning. If you do that again, that's a yellow card. And it seems simple enough to me, doesn't it? They wouldn't do it again. So yes, you can't blame Wycombe for it because I'm sure we'd do it in their position, but it's the referees. So in that regard, we have to switch on to that and think, okay, almost if you can't beat them, join them attitude. If the referees aren't going to stamp down on this, then we've got to do the same thing. And we have been doing that over the last couple of months. But yeah, it's frustrating. It doesn't matter how level-headed you are. I was still sat there watching the game, getting frustrated by it, shouting at the referee. But yeah, within an hour or so, you calm down. You think actually, on the balance of play, I think a draw, 1-1, probably would have been a fair result. But Wycombe are a good team. They beat the leaders last week, playing the same way. So as we've said, mate, there's reasons to be cheerful in this game, and yeah, it's not. Do you have anything else you want to say about the sort of Wycombe style of play, or anything else, mate, in particular?
I think Obita should have been sent off actually for a second yellow when I think
Mm.
it was Marquis who turned him a couple of minutes after he was first booked.
When he held him back,
I
was
think
that?
the referee, yeah, exactly. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's a bookable offence. Doesn't really matter about
I agree.
warnings or final warnings. I think he should have been sent off. Would that have changed the game much? I'm not sure because I think Wycombe would have actually sat back even more if that low block that they had in the second half. As you mentioned, we sort of huffed and puffed, didn't really knock the wall down at all, to be honest. I can't remember Strack having to make a save apart from McCormick. McCormick shot in the 80th minute or so. I thought Maka was actually a bit of a bright spark in that second half. Hopefully there's more to come from him. But that was sort of the Maka of old, or the Maka of 2 seasons ago. Um, I thought Coots was not really up to his usual self. I think he was a bit lazy on the ball, took too much time looking for a pass. Evo, I don't think was at the races in the second half. I think for the second goal, Hall, I'm not sure where Hall was running, but he was clearly out of position. I think just a lot of our players had an off day. I think it's important to not be overcritical because it is one game, and
Mm.
we were off the back of a great win at Charlton. So I think, I think just take the lessons and move on to Exeter because we'll be at home with a raucous Mem crowd, and I think it's an opportunity to bounce back incredibly quickly.
Yeah, yeah. That was pretty much the only other thing. Well, I know we'll speak about something later, but the only other thing that I've really noticed from that game was our back four really got a lesson yesterday. It felt like. Do you know what I mean? They're clearly very inexperienced, and for both of their goals, the second one, Bobby Thomas comes flying out. Against many other teams, you'd get away with that. But yeah, if you're looking long term for this, I know Thomas and Gibson might not necessarily be with us next season, but you think, like I said on the previous pods, we've gone to Derby, Sheffield Wednesday, not Sheffield Wednesday so much. Derby got taught a lesson by our old wise heads. Same thing happened yesterday. So all of these, if we are building long term, we might miss out on the playoffs this year, but next year, hopefully, like you said, as long as you take the lessons from this and can improve for the next season or the next 6 months, that's fine with me. We weren't expecting to be in the playoffs this year, so learn the lessons, like you said. But yeah, I guess moving from our inexperienced defence into, well, perhaps our most experienced player in Scott Sinclair. It's been quite strange the last couple of months for me, I think, and I know you agree with me on this one. Is yeah, where is his best position? What's Barton's plan with him? And you know, I don't feel he's necessarily been playing at his best, but where do we play him?
Yeah, I agree. He's not been at his best, and I think that's just because we haven't been playing him on the wing. The games where he's been on the wing, I think, for example, Rochdale at home in the FA Cup, when he scored the winner, he's been incredibly effective. And it's just trying to play him in the right position, really, because I think ever since we started playing with three at the back, he was playing as a wing back, and then at Charlton at half time or just after half time, we sort of switched to the 4-2. I wouldn't call it a 4-2-4, but a 4-4-2 with high wingers. So he was on the wing, and I'm pretty sure he started on the wing yesterday. But then we sort of seemed to regress towards a 4-3-3, with Sinclair playing as a central midfielder. I can understand from a pure footballing technical ability perspective, it would make sense to have him in the middle. But again, I'm pretty sure he's never played there in his career before. Um, it would have made sense to bring on Finley and play him as central midfield, but then even Finley was out wide when he came on. So I'm not sure. I think it's hard to sort of put Sinclair on a wing when we have three or four strikers. I think Joey tends to play with, if we play three up front, it's actually three strikers really, with Collins and perhaps Loft or Marquis sort of playing as almost inside forward. So it's an odd one, mate. What do you think? Because we started, I think Sinclair actually played pretty well at wing back, but obviously you could tell that it was kind of stunting his ability to go forward.
Mm, it's hard, mate, because when you talk about the Sinclair issue, it feeds into the wider thing of what is our best team and what formation are we going with. If but it's something Barton probably has to weigh up, isn't it? Is Sinclair a quality enough player that you sort of sacrifice the system to get him in there, or sacrifice the system Sinclair to play the system? Do you know what I mean? When it's a three at the back, he is definitely not getting the best out of Sinclair, but then he's also playing the formation that he probably wants to play. If you said to me Sinclair plays, then I go 4-3-3, and I'd definitely have Collins, Coburn, and Sinclair up top. Midfield would probably be the one from last season, not from last season, sorry, Evans, Finley, Rossiter. And then, I'd probably go Hall on his day, Connolly and Gibson, and not sure between Connolly and Thomas, sorry. And then I'd have either Gibson or Gordon at left back. But, it's quite clear Barton doesn't want to play four at the back. And with the three, I just don't know where he fits in that. He's not going to. We don't want him defending, really, do we? He's too good going forwards, too composed on the ball to be a defender. I think what's happened is we've got a few injuries to our senior players and our more experienced players in the likes of Rossiter, Finley, and he's sort of thought to himself, first of all, there's spaces that need to be taken up, just in terms of personnel. And then also he probably rates his professionalism, the experience, the composure in games like that, where he thinks, okay, even if he's out of position, he's still going to do a job for me and do it well. And that's the thing. I don't think anyone can point to a shocker that he's had. I think just because of who he is, and when you think about Scott Sinclair, think about flair, attacking intent, and it's almost like it's almost like he's playing with one hand behind his back, isn't it, at the moment? I just think if Barton can find the way to release him, which he's probably still trying to do, isn't he? He's trying to work out, how can I fit him in here? But yeah, I think once he figures that out, and it might need a change in formation, or it might mean some games like yesterday when we need to be a bit more defensive, he doesn't play. And then a different game, bring him in and let him go.
Yeah, or maybe bring him off the bench.
Yeah.
For example, I think maybe if you were playing fourth, well, I think it was odd, wasn't it? Because we started with 4-4-2, went to a 4-3-3 at the start of the second half. So he did start on the wing, but maybe it would have made sense to, I mean, obviously hindsight's a wonderful thing, but to start with a 4-3-3 with Finley in midfield. But then again, you have to ask yourself, is Finley's been injured for the last 2 weeks? Is he fit to actually play full 90?
Exactly.
So maybe I feel like that was a bit of an anomaly, because I think Sinclair has been playing well at wing back, only since the second half of Charlton. So he didn't play yesterday. So he's played one game
Mm.
on the wing really recently. I mean, when he first joined, he played on the wing a few times. But I think I agree with that front three. I think Marquis is better off the bench, and so if you're playing a front three, it'd be nice to play Collins on the right and just give him a little bit of free rein. Um, and then Sinclair on the left with Coburn up top. I think that would
Mm.
be our best three on paper.
Yeah.
It would also give us a little bit more width if you're playing with maybe Gibson and Hall at left back, who aren't really attacking minded. So um, I think it's about time we gave Sinclair running the team at left wing, because that's where he's played the whole of his career. It's where he had most success at City and Swansea and Celtic as well. So I think his best position is left wing, and we should be playing him there. That will obviously mean four at the back.
Yeah. Well, just a wider conversation, is it, about our team at the minute? I think, years gone by when we haven't been as successful, or even times when we have, you have sort of 12, 13 players who are dead certs in the squad, and you think, okay, if one of them gets swapped out, we're in a bit of trouble here. And I know we may have seen it slightly this last couple of weeks with our centre mid positions because of Finley and Rossiter, but I don't think it's an insult to Sinclair or to Marquis or to Loft to say, look, you're not in the team at the minute, but you could well be the most important player coming off the bench. I know rugby has a thing now where they're calling them finishers instead of substitutes. And whilst it's not quite the same in football, there's definitely a case to be made for that. You look at Marquis against Charlton. He came on, won the game for us. Best player.
Changed the game.
And, I think had it been that yesterday, because I was looking at our bench when we were 2-1 down and thinking, okay, McCormick can come on. And he did create a spark, credit to him for that. But he's still, even if he is a attacking one, he's still a central midfielder. Then credit Lofty came on, didn't do a huge amount. And I wouldn't mind having Loft as a substitute normally, because he will bring a different element to the game. But he wasn't at his full fitness, and you could see that. So I think had he gone with a more defensive team, and maybe, the idea of Sinclair coming on in the 70th minute, playing high up the pitch against a tiring defence, that would have been a good option. But again, like you said, hindsight's a wonderful thing, because in the previous video, we were asking to go gung-ho against Wycombe, and we wouldn't have considered the substitute. So yes, it's worth talking about, isn't it? Because I'm sure this is the sort of debates Barton's having with his squad, with his coaching team, and within himself. So yeah, I think the squad is looking good. It's just we've got so many quality players now. It's just how do we fit them all in, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think there's never been a sort of spell of 4 or 5 games where everybody's fit.
Mm.
To be honest, we had, at the start of the season, all the defenders were injured, and then Finley's been injured at times. Rost has been suspended. Now he's injured for 2 months. Loft was injured for a little while. Marquis was injured. Even Coburn had a little spell on the sidelines, I'm pretty sure. So we've been fortunate to, apart from the defensive injury crisis at the beginning of the season, we haven't really had a sort of injury crisis by definition. But we've had spells where sort of key players have been missing. And so it's kind of frustrating. I think maybe it won't be until Roster's back that hopefully we have, our full strength 12 or 13, as you mentioned, that core of the squad, with everyone fit. So it's interesting because I think we did miss Roster yesterday. It's quite clear, and against Charlton as well. He's not just an apprentice of the dark arts. I think he's approaching master status.
The Grand Master, mate.
The Grand Master, the dark arts. So yeah, I think it's frustrating because we, as you said, we have a very, very good squad. I think one of the best in the league, arguably, especially up front. I think we have the best strike force in the league. And so it's frustrating because I'm not sure until Roster returns we'll have a full 12, 13. And that, I guess, goes on to January window, which we'll touch on in a later video.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, we'll definitely touch on that and see the sort of spots we need filling. But if I'll just sort of off the top of my head now, sort of go through our squad and talk a little bit about each player, not in too much depth, and what we might need, or how I feel about that position. I think up front, I don't think there's any additions needed there. I see there's talks of Charlie Austin. Doesn't really interest me. If he was happy to come in on a lower wage, fair enough. But
Yeah, I think it's a spurious link just because he played at QPR with Joey.
yeah, exactly. And he's based in Swindon, isn't he? So, I think not too much in that. And I don't think we need him. Like you said, I think one of the best strike forces and also one of the most diverse in terms of playing styles. Midfield, I'm happy with, but if Rossiter is going to continue to get injured like this, is it worth bringing in maybe one set of legs? A lone player who's happy to run about, put himself into challenges and stuff. But that midfield is strong again. If our starting midfield, I would have one of the four out of Coots, Finley, Evans, Rossiter. Any of them have done a job for Rovers over the past couple of months and good players. It's the defence, there's a few questions in there. It's just, I was really, really happy when we signed Gibbons, and I'm not quite sure what's gone on there. He hasn't been frozen out by Joey, but it's just sort of, I expected him to be playing a lot more. In a game like yesterday, when you think, he was brought in for his physicality, his experience, his aggression, tenacity, you think a game like that would be perfect for him. I don't know whether Barton wanted the height of Luca Hall. He obviously wanted a bit more defensive solidity as he went for Gibson at left back. But yeah, I find the Gibbons situation slightly odd. I'm not sure what's going on there, to be honest. Do you share the same opinion as me, or do you think he deserves a spot?
I think he does. I think he's a better player than Hall at the moment. I think Hall with time will be better, but obviously he's still very young. I think yesterday was the classic case of a young player just having a bad game. I think Hall he was not on it, but at the same time, we were giving him so much praise after the Charlton game. It just comes to show naturally as a young player, you are going to be probably a little bit more inconsistent. On the given situation, yeah, I think it is odd. I was expecting him to be our first choice right back, but he was injured for a couple of months at the start of the season. I do rate him. I think he started quite a few games in that run, sort of October, November, when we did. I mean, even in December, we've only lost one out of the last 13 games, or two, I think now. So 2 out of 14. So yeah, I think it's an odd one because I would tend to start Gibbons. I think we do have strength in defence. It's a bit odd because, yes, I think yesterday was a bit of an anomaly because we have kept a few clean sheets recently. I really do rate Bobby Thomas. Actually, I thought he dealt with Sam Vokes quite well yesterday. And then you've got Connolly and Gibson. I think if we're thinking, if we're thinking if we're trying to get the best out of our defence, I actually think we need to play five at the back because that means we have Gibson, Connolly, and Thomas. But then if you want to get the best out of our midfield, you want to be playing with three central midfielders, two wide wingers,
Tricky,
no wing backs. So it's an optimization problem for Joey.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, for anyone watching, we will be doing a video on the January transfer window, and leave your recommendations below as to who you think Rovers should sign. I think we've spoken about it's a difficult one of them, and I can't point to a particular area of the pitch where we're struggling. But yeah, we'll be doing a video on that, and we'll also be doing one on the 2022 end of year awards. So do check that one out. Just before we head off, mate, as we did in the last video, do you want to give your predictions for? Let's just go with the Exeter game to start. Just give me your predictions for that.
Exeter. I think it'd be a close encounter. It'd be nice to see Collins against Giovanni Brown again. I think being at the Man with a raucous crowd, I think that will be one deciding factor. So I'm going to go with 1-0 Rovers. Collins goal, 74th minute.
Nice, mate. I don't think it's going to be as close as that. Actually, I know I can't remember exactly what I said in the previous video, but I just feel now I can picture it. Like you said, it's going to be a raucous crowd. Everyone's going to be happy to be back out after being with their family for a couple of days. And I think the boys will be cheered on by that. I think they'll be well up for it. And I think it'll be 3-4-0 to Rovers. So one of our biggest victories of the season. Yeah, and I think it's important. I was speaking to my mate, he's a Shrewsbury fan, and we're in that precarious position where we sort of we're just hanging on to the playoff position hopes, because if we fall off, it could very easily sort of tail off into mid-table obscurity end of the season. So, another 3 points up for grabs, and hopefully the boys can bring it home. Thanks once again for coming on, mate. Thank you guys for listening and watching. If you've enjoyed it, please leave a like. Give us any feedback in the comments below, and we'll catch you later. So cheers, Tom, and cheers for listening, guys.
Cheers, mate.